So I'm going to talk about the all, and I'm going to preview it with, because
Where do you do that? Oh,
because all these things are a little difficult. Glenn Wallace always adds commentary, and some of these sutras are very short. So there's always this level of interpretation. So something to set the tone is in Glenn Wallace's introduction. He says, the central point of the teaching is thus twofold: to enable us to identify the conditions that compel each of us to fashion the particular world that we do at any given moment. So that's the first point. And to enable us to realize the primary condition, making just that fashioning possible. So I'll read that again. The central point of the teaching is thus twofold: to enable us to identify the conditions that compel each of us to fashion the particular world that we do at any given moment, and to enable us to realize the primary condition, making just that fashioning possible. So there is this very short, terse sutra called the All, which I'm not going to try to pronounce in Sanskrit. This was spoken by the Buddha at Swathi. I will teach you the All. Listen to what I say. What is the All? The eye and forms, the ear and sounds, the nose and sense, the tongue and taste, the body and tactile objects, the mind and thoughts. This is called the All. Then there's a second paragraph, which always kind of threw me, but I think I'm beginning to understand it a little better. Someone might say, I reject this All. I will declare another All. But because that is simply a groundless assertion, such a person, when asked about it, would not be able to explain it, but would moreover meet this with distress. What is the reason for that distress? Because that All is not within his or her sensorium. So sensorium is a term that Glenn Wallace, I don't know if he invented this, but he uses it quite a bit. It's just within the realm of your senses. So this idea that the Buddha is presenting here is your All is just what is within the realm of your senses. So I'm going to go to Katagiri's talk on Save All Sentient Beings from March 15th, 1980. And then I'll come back to Glenn Wallace because they both talk about the All. So this is, I'm going to read quite a bit actually, but not all of it. So this is Katagiri. Probably you may notice that there are many English terms in Buddhism using all, or all sentient beings, or all dharmas. In the four vows, we say, I vow to save all sentient beings. Whatever Buddhist scriptures you read, you realize there are many terms, including all dharmas, all sentient beings, that we are very often confused to save all sentient beings. What do you mean, save all sentient beings? Or all is impermanent. What is all? This morning, I would like to learn these terms with you. And even that sentence is kind of, that's very Katagiri-like. I would like to learn these terms with you. He just doesn't present himself as a teacher. He presents himself as a person who's going to learn this with you. So in Buddha's time, Buddha always analyzed the human world and human beings as five skandhas: formed, feeling, perceptions, impulses, and consciousness. And also when the five skandhas are described in a little more detail, at that time, the world is analyzed by six sense organs, six sense objects, and six consciousnesses. So then Katagiri goes in a little bit to the five skandhas, which this is a pretty good, you think it's kind of going off. Katagiri does this a lot. Kind of, you feel like you're going off somewhere. Wasn't he just going to explain the All? And now we're in the five skandhas. But it's an interesting take on the five skandhas, and it begins to come together after I read it about 3 times. So I'm going to skip around here. So everything which is formed, so we're talking about form as the first of the five skandhas, it's called a state of existence, the state of a thing which exists now. When something appears in front of you, this is called existence, the existence of thing. But this existing must be something which you experience. That is, you can experience something, form, shape, or color, the texture of thing, etc. The floor, he talks about the floor in the Zendo quite a bit in this talk. The floor, if you touch it, you can experience something. So the form, this existence of a thing is something which you must experience. So the existence of a thing is not something fixed, not something apart from you. When you say floor is something existent, at that time, the floor is not something apart from you because it is always manifesting itself in a state of being. You can experience through it. So it's showing us something, giving us some information, which we call colors, textures, shape, etc. When you experience the floor as it is, at that time, the floor becomes a state of being which you can touch with your hands, with your body, with your eyes, etc. At that time, you can really accept the existence of the floor. The floor is not something apart from us. It's really a state of existence as a floor connected with us. That's why you have to touch it. You can experience it with your hand, and then you can experience what the floor is. At that time, that floor is not something isolated from you. It is a sort of state of being interconnected with you dynamically from moment to moment. That is what's called state of being, which is called existence. So this is kind of getting it's within the sensorium. The floor exists not apart from you. You are connected to the floor. So one way I've started thinking about this is a lot of Buddhism, a lot of Zen is about relationship. So there's different kinds, levels of relationship. And when we relate to something immediately in our environment, if we can reach out and touch the floor, then that's immediately in your environment. Present moment awareness is all about immediacy. So this little bubble that we're in our sensorium of what we're aware of, what we're in touch with, what we're connected with, it's not apart from us. We're in a very real way, we're creating this world. This is something that's come up in modern physics, comes up in Buddhist psychology these days, but the Buddha talks about it way back when. Katagiri was talking about it in 1980. So it goes on. If you look at the floor, immediately we believe that before I see the floor exists. Immediately we believe the floor is something which exists in advance. So already there is some function of consciousness setting up something which is existent in advance. But that's not the all. The all is something. This is why this was a very difficult concept when I first came across it. We always believe that reality is something that exists outside of us, that we're a subject and reality is an object. But actually, the first level of interdependency is us manufacturing this world that we live in, this manufacturing, this connection, this sensorium that we're part of. Things come into our awareness, and that's what we're aware of. There may be other things, but if we're not aware of them, they're not part of the all. The all is only what we're part of. So all in Buddhism, all is not something existent separate from the individual life. So all comes into existence when I involve form. At that time, the floor becomes one with all dharmas. From this point, my being, the all, is the all for my being. It is not something which I can set up a certain idea of something existent in advance. Before I experience the floor, that is not all. The all is the factors of which my being is structured. It means Floor and I are connected. So this is a tricky concept, and it has to be practiced over and over again, because we really are so set in this conventional way of thinking that reality exists outside of us, but reality only exists within us. The reality we experience only exists within us. So John Donne often says that the color white is not something which we know. We don't know if it exists in the world or not, but the color white is something that we create. And Adam Frank, who's also part of the Varela Symposium, who's an astrophysicist, last year he said, kind of summed this up by saying, there is a world out there, but that's not the world we live in. So there is a world out there, but that's not the world we live in. There's a world we live in that is inside of us. And this has to be practiced over and over again. When you use all dharmas, all sentient beings at that time, the first point that must be observed is called in question. So Katagiri uses this phrase a lot. If you can call it in question, then it's part of the all. And to call something in question is like, what is that? And then your mind, your brain creates the answer. What is that? Oh, that is something I recognize. So when he talks about the five skandhas, he goes through this form, and then there's reception, and then there's recognition, and then we get into this fantastically strange and wonderful term, samskara. So he talks about, I wasn't at Zen Center in 1980, but he talks about an insect in the Amazon. And maybe he used that term in other talks, but I seem to remember him talking about an insect in the Amazon. He must have come back to insect in the Amazon. So insect in the Amazon, if that's not in your direct perception, then that's not part of the all. But as soon as you think about insect in the Amazon, that becomes part of your all as a mind object. But your mind object is not the same as what immediately in front of you, what you can immediately perceive and touch, hear, see. There's this, going back to this level of relationship, the more immediate, the more connected to that environment. So let me go to Glenn Wallace's commentaries on some of this. He calls his commentary, he calls the location of lived experience. So this is what the all is about, is that where is the location of lived experience? It's inside. What is our source for knowing the nature of our experience? It is literally right in front of our noses, namely our means to experience so-called reality. The Buddha refers to this means as the all. It is the all because it comprises the totality of our lived reality. Lived, that is, in the distinction to our imagined, story-laden, deluded sense of reality, the narratives that we apply to everything. And so one good question is, why? Why should we do that? Why should we struggle with this idea that our reality is, as Adam Frank said, there's a world out there, but that's not the world we live in? Why should we work at trying to understand that we live in our reality, in my reality, in your reality? So, and Glenn Wallace kind of approaches that. So one of the example he uses is a scent that comes by, and there's two people the scent, let's say the scent of wood smoke. So the scent of wood smoke to one person is brings back wonderful memories of campfires and camping and wonderful times in the woods. And to another person, it brings back the terror of wildfires and just losing everything. So it's very, very different. So Katagiri's, comes to the second point that I'll get to eventually, but our experience of the all, my experience of the all is very different from your experience of the all, is very different from everybody's experience of the all. But we have to understand that we are kind of manufacturing our experience of reality because of our history, because of our karma. And you can define karma in a way as your karma. Karma is defined as action, but the action is you creating something from something. You create something from something. That is kind of, you can define karma as creating something from something. Your karma, what you create from something, may be different from what I create from something. So Glenn Wallace, again, if we are engaged in the project of overcoming dukkha, suffering, then our total attention is directed towards what unfolds within our sensorium. Attending in this manner, we can become deeply knowledgeable about the quality, processes, and nature of our lived experience, moment by moment. So in this view, your experience is your reality, and your reality is your experience. If that experience is pervaded by persistent dissatisfaction, unease, as the Buddha says, don't you want to know not about reality, but about the nature of experience? I'll read that again. If that experience is pervaded by persistent dissatisfaction, unease, as the Buddha says it is, don't you want to know not about reality, but about the nature of experience? Let's explore the Buddha's notion of totality further by asking another question. Can anything really be said to lie outside the sensorium, the perceptual sphere? Of course, the countless events are unfolding and countless things exist in the world without my being aware. The totality of all these events and things in the past, present, future is what we commonly understand as the all. We call it the universe or cosmos. But this all, this universe, is not the Buddha's concern. His concern is that you come to know your all, your universe, intimately. Know in each instance just what a phenomenon is arising, observe its duration, its gradual dissolution, and its disappearance. So the nature of this coexistence field of reality. So in this, if we observe closely, we observe these two tenets of Buddhism with great attention. And one is the interdependence, that we create a narrative out of everything we see. We say, oh, this is a good table. Oh, this is a bad table. This has a bad joint. This is a good joint. This is a well-glued situation. This is not a well-glued situation. But also we see the impermanence. So the interdependence and impermanence. Things come and things go. So Glenn Wallace not only has commentary, but he has commentary on footnotes. He's a very thorough person. This point may seem obvious. It should be obvious, but we habitually think, speak, and act as if we really believe that the sound, the hearing, and the ear were thoroughly distinct events or object. It takes only a simple act of observation to notice that the three forms a single field of experience. So everything that we experience is our experience. We can't get away from it. And it's also, it needs to be practiced over and over again. So this has always been kind of, that's difficult enough. I mean, the whole world has been turned upside down. But then, interestingly enough, Katagiri Roshi goes on. He has a second point. And the second point is knowing that all is not good enough. So this is really interesting to me. And he uses this phrase, not good enough, several times. So one of the things is, if I know my all, I have certain views of things, and somebody else knows their all, and they're inside their all, and they have certain views of things, and they differ. They don't agree. So that's not a way to have peace and harmony, as he says. And then the other thing is, if you start to observe things closely, you notice there's this kind of grading between, we want things to be fixed, but they're always changing. If we notice things closely, we notice they're always changing. So his second point is that things are not good enough. The original nature of all action is samskara. I'm going to skip back a little. What is just a being? Just a being is what called samskara in Sanskrit. Samskara means original nature of action. This is a phrase he uses a lot too. Original nature of action. The Buddha says all are impermanent. In Japanese, in Sanskrit, what we say is not all. Literally, the translation, all samskaras. Samskaras as means original nature of action working. So the original nature of action in one facet is this impermanence. There's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing really to hold on to if you watch things closely enough. So the second point, briefly speaking, we have to understand deeply the original nature of being. That's why the Buddha says all is impermanent. That's all samskaras. Samskara is the original nature of action, which every day is structured, constant action, working. At that time, you understand your understanding individually. That is not good enough. That is your experience, your understanding. So we were just encouraged to understand that we have our understanding, our individual understanding, our individual views, and then we come to find that that's not good enough, which is called, but it's not good enough because there's still an egoistic sense, which is called individual understanding. We have to find the vast dimension, which is called immensity or equality. This is the basic nature of action. So it's not just impermanence. So what this gets into is this impermanence. So basically, then he starts to repeat himself in various ways because this is hard stuff. But a lot of things, you learn something. What's it say? You try to learn something, but you find that you are being learned. So he talks directly about, here he talks about it as zazen. So he repeats again, that is the second point of all dharmas. You should experience all dharmas individually. At that time, everything becomes all dharmas connected with you. But it's not good enough because there is always an egoistic sense. So we should touch the core of all dharmas. That means forget it. Just jump into it. Just be one. So after we see, and it's a little easier to see if it's not a subject object, if we see that we're creating these narratives, it's a little easier to drop them in some ways, to see that it's a creation. But there's more, there's even more, which is really, I think, one of the key points of this talk. The same applies to Zazen. Learn Zazen. What is Zazen? Well, philosophically, psychologically, you can learn this, but it's not good enough. He uses this phrase how many times? So just jump into Zazen. So finally, Zazen teaches you. Zazen takes care of you. So this is what happens during Sesshin is you start out with effort and all these things come up and you try this and you try that. And eventually there's a certain level of exhaustion, but you're still paying attention. And then you get to this point where Zazen teaches you. Zazen takes care of you. And the example he uses a lot in here is swimming in the lake, which was right in front of MZMC. So you can learn a lot about swimming, you can read a lot about swimming, but you won't know swimming until you get in the water and you see how the water supports you, how the water teaches you, how you learn from the water what to do in the water. And this is true of all of our activities. I like to think of it as cooking. Cooking, you can read recipes, you can follow the recipe, but if you're paying attention, cooking teaches you. You get this feedback, and cooking is supporting you as you cook. And the same thing with just about everything that we do with this immediacy is there's this learning from it as you do it. So I think I heard maybe Jack Kornfield talking about Ajahn Chah teaching, assigning his students. He was a forest monk in Southeast Asia, and they're in the forest, they're in the jungle, and he assigns his students sweeping. And he assigns them sweeping for so long that they go through everything. Just like a sesshin, you go through everything in your mind. So you go out sweeping, you're enthusiastic about sweeping, you think you're doing a good job of sweeping, and then eventually you get like, why am I sweeping? What this is ridiculous. Everything keeps falling down. I'm sweeping. But eventually you get to the point where you're just sweeping. And sweeping is teaching you how to sweep, and you're just sweeping. That's kind of the other side of samskara, the other side of impermanence, the support side, the side that holds you up. So personally, when I was going through a lot of grief when my wife died, I have to say that in a very odd way, as my whole life seemed to be falling apart, I felt supported by my grief. I felt I was learning how to grieve as I was grieving. And it was a profound experience, but I wasn't expecting to feel this kind of support at that time. So I hope that all made sense. So we start with the all, we turn our lives backwards. We don't say there's a subject and an object. We just say there's just this connection. We're interdependent with the world around us. The more immediate it is, the more immediate that relationship, the more intimate that relationship. And then it goes from there. And then category says, that's really good, but it's not enough, because you have to let go of that. You have to let go of your thinking. So then in the question and answer series, there's this section that is just the essence of category. And after that talk, you can kind of see why he's coming around to this a lot. So I'll read this as the final part. Whatever you feel individually, that's understanding. Let's touch the core of existence, which is called real impermanence. Real impermanence is something you should be one with. That's why basically I always tell you, just take care of your life. That's something that Katagiri said over and over. Just take care of your life, because it's this, you create this world immediately around you. Take care of that world immediately around you. Have that relationship with the world immediately around you, that you're taking care of it, you're kind to that world immediately around you, that you respect that world immediately around you. Whatever you feel, good or bad, right or wrong, stand up straight. Do your best to handle your obligation, your duties, and your task. Anyway, just do it. That is what puts you right in the middle of impermanence. So very naturally, you can learn, just like diving into the ocean. Whatever you feel, like or dislike, just jump into the ocean. And very naturally, you can learn something. What it is to swim, how to swim, what is the ocean, what is the human body and mind. Very naturally, you can learn. And then he always ends something like this. Does that answer your question? A lot of times he said, is that okay? Is that okay? So that's where I'm at. Is that okay?
Well, does anyone want to add something or ask a question of Ryushin now?
Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess the first few times I heard, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, and mine was treated as one of the senses, six senses. I was always kind of thrown about, your insect in the Amazon just got me thinking about why the quality of that experience is different than the other senses. And at what point does encountering a sense object become rumination, or does it matter in the end? Or I don't know, could you, is that part of the sensorium in the same way, or I don't know.
Katagiri kind of leaves a space in there, because once you think about the insect in the Amazon, it's part of your all, but it's not this, it still doesn't have the same quality of as if that insect is in front of you. So you can, like I was thinking this morning, I've never been to Paris, but let's say I think about Paris and I think about, sitting on a cafe, and I think about being on the sidewalk and it starts to drizzle and like a little drop of rain falls in my cafe au lait, and it's like, that's very, it's very, you can get very, very specific, but it's not the same as ever being there. It's not. So our minds go off in these narratives pretty easily. And it's not quite the same quality. I think that quality is kind of defined by the immediacy of it. So what great poets, what great writers manage to do is kind of trigger your imagination to have this kind of full experience, but it's not really a full experience. It's not the same as being there. That's the best I can do.
Yeah, with a comment, there's a world out there, but that's not the one we live in. I mean, it's the same thing, right? I mean, even if you are in Paris and you have that experience, it's still not. But I mean, I guess it's your all. But in that case, your description of Paris could be part of your all. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm splitting hairs. It's just.
No, this is really difficult stuff. I mean, you grow up just it's nobody even tells you about it. You just assume reality is out there and you're in here, and reality kind of sucks a lot of times. But then you realize this is your creation in some ways. So even if you're in Paris, it's like it's still you're creating Paris while you're in Paris. And if you have an idea of Paris before you get to Paris, that idea of Paris is going to influence your creation of Paris once you're in Paris. So I can see why people get confused. I just came back from the North Shore, and the colors were phenomenal. I had never seen colors up there. Like they may have been there other years like that, but we never hit the peak. And I think it's the conditions that they had. They had a lot of nice rain when we didn't. And after a while, it got to be too much almost. It's like these neon bright colors, just painterly. It's like, this looks like somebody painted this. This doesn't look, And my friend and I tend to hike a lot of the same hikes, and then notice, oh, this had a big blowdown. This you never could see back this far into the forest before. And so it's kind of interesting to hike the same hikes. You want to see new things, but if you hike the same ones, you realize this kind of impermanence is just pervasive. You can't get away from it. Things have changed. So I don't know why I brought that up.
Ken is wanting to say something.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so very much for that, Jan. Such a good and so important reminder. Why is it we have to come back here again and again and again and hear the message? But this was wonderful. Very nice, and it's very nice to hear you and see you folks down there. Thank you all.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to slip into this idea of reality is out there. And there is something out there, just that we make something out of what's out there. So.
And I think we don't always realize how much we have to come back to it again and again and again. That's what our practice is about, helping us see beyond.
Yeah, there's a section in Katagiri's talk where he says, talking about samskara and the core of action, and this action is total impermanence, and he says, and you can't stop it. You can't stop it as much as we'd like to. We can't stop it. It's not exactly a good feeling sometimes. You can't stop it. You have to.
The world, let me get off. Artman, did you have something?
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. I always enjoy your interesting talks here. It seems we have two aspects to our all. There's the internal and the external, and that's the source of our experience. And our consciousness processes both of those. And we live inside that conscious representation of what we experience through, our, as you say, the sensorium. And so we all live inside our own representation of our experience. And I think, Aaron, that's where we all live in different worlds, but the same world, and just because we live inside a representation, according to Evan Thompson, doesn't mean that that representation is not real. It may not be equivalent to, the raw material of our perceptions, but consciousness processes all of that stuff, and the wavelengths hit our eyes and we see the color white, and we don't know why. And that's the way the brain works, and that's the way we represent our experience of those wavelengths. So anyway, enjoyed your talk quite a bit, and here we are with our all, and that's part of the challenge. Is we all live a different representation, and we're all trying to understand each other and get along. And interesting. And we have to come back to that, as Ken said. Thanks for that reminder, Ken. So thanks for the talk, Ryushin.
Kim? I can't hear you.
Flip back into mute.
What was the date of the Katagiri lecture?
March 15th, 1980.
Thank you. And I'm kind of going through an exercise of going back to the simplest things that we get. And one of those, of course, is the Four Noble Truths, which don't address anything having to do with astrophysics, time travel, or anything like that. It has to do with unease and unsettling. And those are things that happen within our own little environment. The spot where Katagiri says, take care of your life. And so sometimes when we get the unsettling can arise when we're maybe too far away from our lives, and we're introducing things that maybe are irrelevant and trying to resolve an irrelevant problem and becoming wrapped around the axle as we do that. Anyway, I've been trying to look at things from that viewpoint, from the most simplistic parts. And there's another simplistic part that Katagiri brought up, and that's has to do with the sensorium. And it was something that absolutely baffled me when he said it. He said that the universe is born on the day that you're born, and it dies the day that you die. And of course, at that time, I was involved in my academic career, and I, this immediate voice came from the back of my head, well, bullshit, that can't be true. And it was some months or maybe a couple of years before I finally came to understand where he was coming from. And I think both of those points, the simplicity of what can exist and the complexity of what can exist, are brought out by what you've spoken of today. So as always, I appreciate hearing you, and thank you very much for the effort and time that you put into preparing your talk. Thank you.
So I should acknowledge that I'm very grateful that Kikan Mike Howard has transcribed these talks, because there's just a treasure of teaching here. And I think I remember that notion of the universe begins when you're born and goes away when you die. That's what blew me away. It's like, what? But it's our experience is the only universe we know. And as Carl says, it doesn't mean it's any less real. It's because what else do we know? That's what we know is real. But you go up north and they tell you these rocks are 2.5 billion years old, and it's like, huh. Okay, but I'm not a geologist. I just know that rock right now. Right? So, and some of the stories of the rocks are pretty interesting, but those are stories. I don't know if that's, I just know the rock right then. So. Kikon, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Rushin, for taking on this talk. It's one I've been kind of dreaming about taking on for like a long time, but it's also like one of the more challenging ones that I've come across so far. So I was, as you know, a little scared too in some ways, but I really appreciate your framing of it. I mean, one very simple thing that was actually very useful for me is just understanding this talk as kind of two parts. There's the first part and the second part. I hadn't really like fully gotten that before you mentioned it, and that helps me. You can kind of tell that I had, that I was still working with this talk by the summary I wrote of it, which says something like, what is the all? It may be different than what we think. Something, samskara, something. But anyway, yeah, I thought, shoot, I had a question for you, but I think it's kind of moved on and I don't remember it right now. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Say thank you for your talk.
In this talk, now that I've read it like 4 or 5 times, I think Katagiri knew it was a difficult talk because, whenever you're in a meeting or you're like trying to get a point across, you start to repeat yourself, even though what's the point of repeating yourself? It's like you're trying to convince yourself or trying to get the point across to other people and you're not sure it's coming across. And Katagiri repeats himself in the second part of the talk several times. And it's like, he's trying. It's something that comes across in these talks. He's really trying to help us understand. And it's not easy for him to express. It's not easy for us to pull it up because once you get to the question and answer thing, it's like it just goes in all kinds of directions, and it's like it's really the question and answer thing is best ignored for a while, I think, in some of these. So.
If there's no other questions, we'll move on to announcements. Thank you so much, Rushin. So next week, our speaker will be Reverend Onryu Kennedy. And coming up at Hokyoji, the Land Care Weekend is October 21 through 23. All are welcome to come to that. And the men's retreat is October 27th to the 30th. And please consider coming to that. There were rave reviews last year. Another way you can support Hokyoji is by connecting with our Facebook and Instagram pages. Sunday talks and other announcements and info about the community are available there. Please like us on social media and help us spread the word about Hokyoji. You're always welcome to come for a personal retreat at a time when there's not an event happening. We'd love to see you. So now let's close with the closing chant, which is in your chat book. in your chat section. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thanks, everyone. You all have a great day. Good to see you all.
Good to see you, Susan.
Thanks,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.